often wondered about, and I've spoken about this as recently as last week. The Million Man March, for example, more than 20 years ago, made a lot of black folks feel good, but I would argue only black folks were listening. Who is this protest for? Who should be listening? Is this for white people? Is this protest the protest that should say, not "I can't breathe," but "I told you so"?
I think that this is beyond protest. I think we've entered into a kind of a zone that could be called revolution. And it's not just a protest or an objection, but people want a complete, constructive change. Some reforms must be advocated for. Well, I specifically state that the doctrine of qualified immunity should be abolished, and people say that the vote is the way. Well, that should come through the House to Senate, signed by the president. That qualified immunity and the laws that give the police a dramatically increased amount of leeway to use force versus the average citizen. This lets a lot of police officers off criminal prosecution as well as civil liability. Qualified immunity must be abolished. It'd be interesting to see whether Minnesota, and in specific this county, in this county, the county of Hennepin, to see whether or not they are really seriously address the training, the policies, and the practices of that police department, or whether they give lip service to it, or whether they actually make training. In civil lawsuits, we often sue the county and we charge them with 1983 failure to train and failure to supervise. And most of the time those lawsuits are settled, but we really did not get that change in that department. They might pay money out, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, but did that change that was sued in that complaint, did that change actually take place?
Let me stop you right there, because I'm a taxpayer, okay, and those lawsuits that were settled, for example, the lawsuits that have been settled right here in Baltimore, I paid my taxes. I don't like what led up to those lawsuits, but I don't feel that in my pocket. When the city of Baltimore or the District of Columbia or Minneapolis or New York or Miami pays out these lawsuits, that's not hitting me where I'm hurt. The thing that hits me is the thing that led me up to it, which brings me to a feeling of anger and frustration that Andre mentioned earlier. Now, certainly we're not going to, advocate violence. I will give, Andre the useful impetuous expression, but I don't want to see you in jail. But how do you, Mike, channel the anger to change beyond the protests?
I mean, people have got everybody that's listening to my voice should log on and fill out their census tonight. Make sure they fill out the census, and then get on their phone and tell 5 friends and family to log on and fill out their census. The census is ultimately how we get counted and funds that get redistributed to us. And we got to fix, and then voting, obviously register to vote, make sure we go out and vote. Local, vote down the ballot, all the races, make sure we vote for county attorney, make sure we vote for judges. And keep the heat up. I was taking notes of what Dr. Shabazz was saying. I agree with all that. We got to fix the qualified amnesty. I will say that another problem we have here in Hennepin County is that we've got a racist police chief by the name of Bob Kroll, who is, police union president. Let me make sure I get it. Union president. We have to figure out how the unions actually have power over what cops get away with. For example, right now, in the middle of all this, in the middle of a worldwide riot started right here in my backyard. The police union would like to change their union contract to say that if you're fired for discharging a weapon early, hit someone, and you're fired for it, you can reapply for your job a couple years later. So they are still right now trying to get more power for police while we are trying to get them more accountable. So fill out the census, make sure we vote, but still, let's be active in these streets because all these systematic problems add into the fact that he was able to feel like he can choke out a black man in this city on a holiday in broad daylight and kill this man. And the reason he felt so cavalier and so like I'm not held accountable to do it, is because there has been little tiny grasp of power by the police department in this city and around the country through union contracts and through not being held accountable, and that this police officer thinks that he has the ability to do it. We need to take some power back. Fill out the census, vote, but also I say we keep the heat up in cities around this country and make it a long hot summer. And we're going to keep, as Dr. Shabazz just said, the only reason these police officers are not walking around the streets of Minneapolis today is because we burned down this precinct. And we have been peacefully protesting since then, and they're listening to us because there's thousands of people in the streets. So I think like, yes census, yes voting, but let's keep up the pressure and let's keep up the protest in the streets as well.
Explain that to me a little bit more. You're suggesting that because the police precinct in Minneapolis burned, that was the pushback for the police department to let people know that, oh, we are serious?
Yeah, I think there's no way, and I quickly answer that, there's no way that officer was charged the next day. If you were in Minneapolis and watched the timeline, Mike Friedman came out on TV and said there was not enough. He came out with two other white people from like the Attorney General or somebody else who said like Trump's watching this, and came out and said there's no more evidence. I was there at the precinct when we got the news, and it shocked us like to our core. To our core. And that was the moment where we said, you know what, the system is messed up. The system is messed up. And I'm 100% sure that if we didn't take radical action right then and there, those officers would still be walking around, and Mike Freeman would still be hiding behind we're investigating, trying to get us tired to get distracted again so we can get back on this hamster wheel that I've been talking about.
Dr. Shabazz, you were going to say something.
I want to say,